House hacking is really a way to help turn your property, usually your primary residence, into a monetizing opportunity. Instead of being the main leaseholder, you are the holder of the mortgage and you rent out a room. It can be as simple as that. And you can get more involved with that, buying a duplex, buying a triplex, buying a building that you then got tenants. You become the landlord, and that helps pay your mortgage, if not all of your mortgage.
Welcome to Personal Finance Cat, where I share my personal take on personal finance. Hi, Liz. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much. Glad to be here.
I know you're a real estate agent, and prior to becoming a real estate agent, you were in, I think, art, design, and technology for 20 some years. Tell us about your experience maybe prior to becoming a real estate agent and how that helped you transition into real estate.
Yeah, sure. I started my career out of college as an artist and an educator. So I was teaching and then working on my visual art career. I decided to go back to graduate school for my MFA and began doing sort of what we call governess, which is working with families. And it's kind of like a step above a nanny. You really are like involved in some of the social, emotional, and educational decisions for the kids. Um, and that was fantastic. It was a really great way for me to cut down my hours and be able to focus on my art career, which I was really able to do for about 20 years. And was in San Francisco. A lot of my friends worked in technology, and it was an exciting time to be in San Francisco, the late 90s to the middle teens. And a friend of mine was starting a clothing company that had a crowdsourced design element to it. So they needed someone to sort of corral all of these creative thinkers online and a community of people who would be submitting clothing concepts to the brand, which we broadcast in sort of a Kickstarter sort of way. We did crowdfund like the top most upvoted concepts and would take them into production. And we fell upon some hugely successful specific items in our our VCs wanted us to focus on that, which meant I no longer really had a job at the company because we weren't going to be pooling, massive crowdsourced design anymore. We're going to focus on those specific items. And my partner had gotten a job in Denver. We decided to buy a house in Denver because we could not afford one in the Bay Area. And when my division in that company was shut down, I decided to move to Denver, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. And then my dear mother reminded me of how obsessed I am with design and homes and architecture, and how I have been totally obsessed with neighborhoods, city structure, urban planning, housing since I was a kid, and encouraged me to get my real estate license. And that was 5 years ago. And it's been probably the best decision I've made in my adult life. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. So have you been a real estate agent or broker for 5 years then?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that the time when you moved to Denver? It was 5 years ago?
I moved to Denver about 7 years ago.
Okay.
I took some time away
Mhm.
just to think about what I wanted to do and settling into a new city.
Gotcha.
And went back to teaching a little bit, substitute teaching here in Denver. Got to know the city really well and communities in the city, and yeah. And then I got my real estate license, and it's been wonderful. When I was a kid, I really struggled with reading, and on Sundays it was this ritual in our house. The paper would come, and I have an older brother, and we would race to the newspaper to get the comics section. And he was bigger and stronger and faster than I was, so he would get to the comics before I could because I had a hard time reading, and it was nice to see the stories laid out on a comic strip. So he'd get that section. And back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, the only other print section in the Sunday, or sorry, the only other color picture section on the Sunday paper was the housing section, the real estate section. So I would go to that next because it had the best pictures. And even though I struggled with reading, my spatial concepts were really great. My understanding of the map of the city was really excellent, and I was great at math. So since I was little, I would dig in to the real estate section and look in and map where these homes were and who would be able to live there. And, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds fun. But the reason why I asked you when you moved to Denver was because I knew that Denver experienced a huge surge in prices as well. I want to say probably even before you moved there, because it used to be relatively affordable, and then all of a sudden, a lot of people moved to Denver. I think probably from San Francisco and other higher cost areas. But
Yeah, a lot of California and Texas and Florida and a lot of coastal migration to Denver, definitely, of which I was part of, sort of like the tail end of the first wave of
Mhm.
that. Prices had certainly gone up quite a bit when we bought our first home. And, people were a little bit, don't move here from California. And then other people were like, yes, move here from California. We need your progressive thinking. We need. Um, and then the city really sort of embraced the growth and saw that it was really beneficial. A lot of restaurants from the coast started opening. Chefs were coming to Denver. The food scene here is like off the hook now. It's so interesting and great. We've got great food in Denver. And part of that's just, people coming here to start businesses because it was more affordable. Then when COVID happened, we saw a price surge in the same ways that we saw that in a lot of areas. Denver is interesting because it's a big city, but you can live in the heart of the city and have a decent sized backyard, a single family home on a decent sized backyard. So we have friends who would visit and we're like, how can you be walking distance to downtown and have this much land? So when people wanted to leave Chicago and New York and San Francisco and these much more densely populated cities, Denver was a great alternative because it's a big city. There's a lot of resources, a lot of industry, a lot of jobs, but a little bit more breathing room. So we experienced a very big surge. In some neighborhoods, the price is even doubling
Wow. Yeah.
in a very short period of time.
Yeah. I had an internship in Denver in 2012. Oh gosh, that was more than 10 years ago. So back then it was much more affordable because I remember someone that was just starting her job there, she was able to even afford a house. It's not in Denver proper, it's not in downtown, but it was like pretty reasonable, right? And she can commute to work with I think the light rail or whatever they call it.
Mm-hmm.
It had been nice, but recently, as you said, it's doubling. So it must be a tough market now. So my next question to you is, have you seen more difficulty and challenge of home buyers trying to buy? And how are you helping them to kind of navigate all of this?
Yeah. Well, I remember, it was sort of right before the interest rates really came down, like from the high threes into the very low threes, and then even sub three. And the prices really started to surge. I was helping my client's son, who is a night orderly, makes $20 an hour, hardworking young guy, and he was looking for a home, and we were able to find him a home, a great home. It's got 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. On the north of the north side of the city, just outside of the city. But I think that sale price was 400. $300,000. And I remember going through that transaction with them and really feeling like this was going to be one of the last times I would be able to serve someone with that budget that close to the city.
Mhm.
Just because you could see it, like the market was just under this pressure cooker and the prices were going up so much. You know what? Maybe he was even like 375. I can't quite remember. I'll have to look up the price.
That's really
But
good.
yeah, but and that I was talking to someone recently, like, I serve clients that have, a $300,000 budget, and I serve clients who have a $3 million budget. And I work just as hard for both of them, because it's very hard to find a home that checks all the boxes at that low of a budget. And it's very hard to appeal to the person who's got all the money in the world to spend because they can be very particular too. And one pays the bills and one feeds my soul. And you've got to do both. I meet a lot of brokers who like they just want to do luxury because they're going to make so much more per transaction, and that's the farthest thing from my interest, because if I just did that, I wouldn't have the same sense of helping the broader community, right? One of the things that my partner and I do, and has been the reason we've been able to acquire the property that we have, is that we're house hackers. So we have converted a unit in our basement into the ability to short-term rental. It's not a unit that would be on the long-term rental market. It's not a unit where someone who is in the workforce here in Denver would want to live, but it's perfect for someone who's only going to be here for a week or a couple of days or going to see a concert at Red Rocks. And that's been an incredible way to offset the cost of our mortgage every month. I've also worked with young couples who collectively want to purchase a home together. So two couples want to make the investment, and it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house. Together they can make that happen. Separately they can't make it happen. So just explaining to people what their options are, and getting into that home ownership, because rent is a waste of money. It's just, you're just paying for somebody else's life. And it's really important to learn how to finance something for yourself, whether, it doesn't have to be your dream house, but just something that you can start building your wealth on.
Very nice. So, since you mentioned house hacking, can you explain that a bit more for listeners who don't understand what that is?
Yeah, well, house hacking is really a way to help turn your property, usually your primary residence, into a monetizing opportunity. So whether that's instead of being the main leaseholder, you are the holder of the mortgage, and you have potentially roommates, friends that people that you meet, and you rent out a room. It can be as simple as that, even in a condominium. If you have a 2 or 3 bedroom condominium, and you can rent out the primary, rent out the one that has the ensuite, make your more money that way and help offset your monthly costs. So that's really sort of like the basic of what house hacking is. And you can get more involved with that. Buying a duplex, buying a triplex, buying a building that you then, you've got tenants, you become the landlord. And that helps pay your mortgage, if not all of your mortgage. We're very lucky. There are some months, especially in the summertime and during the Red Rocks music season, when we cover our entire mortgage from our guests. And that's a great month. We love that month.
Yeah,
We love that month.
right. Because you lived rent free or mortgage free for that month. So that's
Yeah, exactly. It just goes straight there. So that's really, really nice. And those opportunities, you just have to, and then maybe this is where sort of the artistic designer problem solver part of my brain really kicks into action. And that's, how can we make this work? like, and then finding the right lenders who are going to work with you with that in mind. What do you need to get to them to show that this property has, maybe it has a precedent of being able to, bring in income. We've since sold our first property, which we had an Airbnb in our basement, just a little thing with a kitchenette. Um, and then we moved into a bigger home that also has an Airbnb in the basement. Um, and we were able to do that transition by showing what we were making on the first property. So our first property actually didn't count as debt in our debt to income ratio because we were able to show that we actually weren't having to pay $2,600 a month in mortgage because we were making $2,400 a month on our Airbnb. So we were able to acquire one property without letting go of the other. Once we moved, we let go of the other. And the people who bought it were three friends,
Mhm.
and they Airbnb the basement. So they had, the vision to continue to use that property and monetize it.
That's great. And I'm sure you made money off of the increase in the price as well. So it goes to show,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
That worked out in our favor as well. The
Yeah.
timing was good for us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. Are you involved with the Bigger Pockets community at all? Because they're based in Denver. No? It's
No.
actually how I learned a lot how to invest in real estate. They're basically a company where they just have people share their experiences investing in real estate. It
Hmm.
started as more like a forum, right? Like people just
Uh-huh.
post questions and other people answer. And then they had their podcast, they had webinars, and they just evolved into a much larger company that provides all kinds of services, courses, etc.
Look it up.
House hacking is a phrase that's coined by one of the founding, I mean, he was not a founder per se, but he really brought the company from like a small company to a very well-known company in the real estate investor community. His name is Brandon Turner. He coined the phrase house hacking. My next question to you is you're fluent in Spanish as well, right?
I am.
Yeah. How does that help you with maybe getting more access to the client base?
It hasn't as much as I would like it to be
Oh.
honest. There is a large population of Spanish speakers in Denver, and people who are generations in Denver. Colorado was not always part of the United States. um, and but those families tend to be very bilingual, and there might be a couple times where like a word pops up and that helps. Um, and but it hasn't, I haven't had any clients who have spoken only Spanish. Although I do have a few friends who speak primarily Spanish, and I'm working on getting them to become clients.
Okay, cool, cool. I think on your bio, it mentioned that you helped your clients acquire over $50 million of real estate just in the past 5 years, which is very impressive. Can you talk about some of the strategies that you used? I think you mentioned that you serve clients no matter what their budget is. Is that sort of your secret sauce, or are there other strategies that you employed?
No, I think first of all, I've just been really working my butt off for the past 5 years. I'll say that, and I actually just crossed the threshold to make it into the Remax Hall of Fame, which is very exciting to have accomplished that in 5 years. It's
Yeah.
just like a level of sales that I just crossed that threshold in my last closing, which is pretty exciting. But it's really, especially when the competition was so high, a year and a half ago, when we were looking at 12 to 20 multiple offers on a single property. I think the secret sauce was always getting really, really deep in the comparables and understanding what expectations were. That coupled with really, really clear communication with the listing agent and making sure that they knew exactly what my clients would be able to offer, and also having offers that were really, really clean, really unmessy, nothing to be. Yeah, one of the things that I get back from listing agents all the time is like, wow, this was like the cleanest offer I've ever seen written, which is just making it as uncomplicated as we possibly can given their financial situation, making sure to show proof of funds for closing, making sure to have those lender letters, making sure that lender is calling the listing agent, making sure that like nothing is questionable or vague, and everything is like really, really straightforward and clear. I didn't ever really have clients that were, um, you know, five, six, seven offers before they were accepted. Fortunately, my clients got their offers accepted pretty quickly, and they weren't always the highest offer. And there were times also, um, which I think a lot of brokers overlooked, is really looking at the zoning of the property, understanding the future potential of what the property offers, because that is going to drive up the price for the person who is looking for that particular kind of zoning. And I had one client that did not get a property because they came up against a cash offer. But let's say the property was listed at like $825,000, and our offer was going to be 875, or and I knew that we would be coming in high, but the zoning also allows for a triplex to be built at the single family property. So a developer, I told my clients at the start, our only competition here is going to be a developer who comes in cash. And that was just at what I thought a developer would pay for it. And indeed, they had 10 offers. Most of them were only at like 850, 860, because I don't know if their realtors were looking as deeply into the zoning as I was. And then, so we had the lead offer, but the other one was cash. So, it went to the person with cash because it makes things that much more easy.
Mhm.
There's also times where I told my clients that I didn't see the value in going any higher than they were saying to go. There was one property that these clients still talk about, the place on Moncrief. They're always like, oh, but we didn't get that place on Moncrief. And I'm like, I am so happy you didn't get that place. It was a flip. It was a very quick flip. It was great looking, but it was going for almost $200,000 over the asking price. And my clients were like, well, let's just do it. And I'm like, let's not. Let's pause for a second. I think what you like is the interior decorating. Like, let's go back and take a look and imagine this place not staged. It
Mhm.
didn't even have a dining room.
Oh,
It had like a bench built into the kitchen. Like, there was nowhere to sit. There was no ensuite. There was, all this stuff. I'm like, it is gorgeous, but you can also hire this interior designer to do your house, whichever house we get, and it's going to end up looking very similar to this one.
yeah.
So, also being able to see sort of past the tricks of listing, um, is also really important. Not getting caught up in the Instagramminess of the current the current look, because once you get all your stuff in there, it's not going to look like that.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Perhaps your background of being an artist or a designer helps you also. Do you offer any sort of advice for your clients, kind of to design, like at least picture what this could look like potentially?
Yeah, I don't actually get down to like sketching things out for them, but I do work with a design builder. I do sales for a design builder, and that's really when I get to help conceptualize and create spaces with the clients, because we don't go straight to architecture. We do a lot of the recon with the client before we get to the art, because architects are very expensive. So if I can get all of their needs and sketch it out first, before going to the architect, that saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I love it. I mean, walking through a place, and my favorite thing to hear is like, oh, I hate dark cabinets. And I was like, well, you know what? I have a painter that does an amazing job. And if you just want them to be white,
Right.
we can make that happen. And we can make that happen for a lot less than not getting this place.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely really helpful because I think one of the things I'm looking into myself is how do we redesign the space? Because I feel like it's really not well utilized. And we're thinking about maybe hiring a designer. What typical types of interior designers have you worked with?
Yeah, well, I've worked with people on the new build side who've had interior designers that they've brought on to the project,
Mhm.
for better or worse. That it can complicate things. Architects and interior designers aren't always considering the budget. They're more considering their vision and what they want to see happen, and that can include materials and things that are very expensive and make the project a bit out of the range or a bit out of the comfort zone of the client. Um, but yeah, I mean, I in my own home, I had someone come and do a consultation about lighting, more because my partner and I weren't agreeing on what the lighting should look like. And they liked their ideas less than my ideas, so that just helped me win that argument. um, but yeah, there's a couple of design build companies that I've worked with who it's not like a knockdown rebuild, but it's more of just like a moving walls sort of thing. Coming in, examining. Do you need to put another T-bar in here? Or is this a load bearing wall or not, and that sort of thing.
Mhm, mhm. You mentioned that you have received this Hall of Fame recognition.
Yeah,
Congrats, by the way. And then I
thank
think
you.
on your bio or your website, you also have a lot of other accolades, such as the Walton Fellowship Award and the Jacob Javits Fellowship. How do these awards impact your work in the real estate area?
My Watson Fellowship Award allowed me to live out of the country for 2 years after college. So just really having more of a global perspective on life and the way that people live. I think I'm really open and accommodating and meet people where they are, in terms of what they're looking for and what's important to them. Um, it's not about me when we're out looking for a house. It's about the client. It's about what they need and what they want. Really listening, um, and and taking the time to get to know them, to help advise them. The Jacob Javits Award was a fellowship that I got for my Master's of Fine Arts studies. Um, and again, that really just enabled me to pursue that dream. Um, and I guess I've found myself really fortunate. I mean, those were merit based awards. I worked really hard to get them. And I'm pretty driven and focused when it comes to my work and my success. I don't tend to do things halfway. I don't tend to do things B plus. If I am going to do something, I'm going to do it as best as I can. And when there is an element of competition, which there is in real estate, that drives me a little bit more, I guess, to put get ahead of the pack in that way, um, but not for not at the risk of losing the need of my client, I guess. Um, so
That's great. Speaking of competition, I'm sure there's a great amount. What are some of the strategies that you use to stay ahead of the pack?
yeah, well, I've been really fortunate in that most of my clients that I get now are referred to me by other clients that
Ah,
I've helped.
cool.
So that's been really great. I think that alone sort of speaks to the experience that my clients get, that they have with me. I did take out, right when I started, I spent some ridiculous amount of money on like online leads or something like that. And oh my God, they were horrible. I mean, nothing ever came out of it. But I stay involved in my communities, and it's funny. I actually every year I host the Tennyson Street Pet Parade the Saturday before Halloween. It's part of a bigger fall festival in this business district in Denver. This will be our sixth annual pet parade. It's very exciting this year. I love doing it, and I just laugh all the time because people come up to me and they're like, "I didn't know you were a realtor. We've been coming every single year. We had no idea. We just bought a
Uh,
we totally would have used you." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm really not good at the self promotion thing." I'm like, I just am never gonna, jam it down anybody's throat that I am a realtor. I'm here. It's like it seems ingenuine a bit to me, but I provide a great service, and people just are finding out about it, I guess.
that's usually the best marketing tool, right? Is the word of mouth.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Was it challenging in the first couple of years, though?
Yeah, actually, so our office, this street that I mentioned, Tennyson,
Mhm.
our office used to be on Tennyson, and Tennyson Street in the past, probably starting now 20 years ago, but even in the past 5 years, has changed an incredible amount. Um, but there's a lot of retail and restaurants on that street. And our old office is now an apartment building, but it used to be just a one level office, and we had a parking lot. And I moved to Denver. I didn't know anybody really except for my partner's family. And I asked my managing broker at the time, I said, "Hey, would you think it was weird if I put my desk in the parking lot?" He was like, "No, why would you do that?" And I'm like, "Because nobody ever comes in here. Like,
Mm.
nobody ever comes in here." So I used to roll my desk out on Saturdays and Sundays into the parking lot and have water for puppy, dog biscuits, and like a sign that said like AMA real estate, like ask me anything real estate. And I ended up getting 5 buyers
Oh, wow.
that were renters in the neighborhood that way, and they all had dogs, and they were all renting in one of 4 buildings on the street. And then when I do my customer appreciation event every year, the first year they all got back to, and they're like, "I recognize you from the elevator. Do you have a dog?" And like, "That's how she got us too."
Mhm.
And so just from that core group,
Mhm.
it's really grown from there. Two of those 5 first buyers have gone on to then sell their home and buy bigger homes because they had kids, or whatever life comes in. And yeah, so it's just kind of grown from there. But like literally just being available on the street and letting people know I was there to answer questions,
Yeah. Wow.
and it was great.
Yeah, that's great. That's very creative, right? And effective. I applaud you for having that courage and creativity to do that. All right. So let's talk about Denver Nook, because I saw that on
Mhm.
your website, which
Yeah.
seems like a company that you founded.
It's so wherever we go as realtors, we hang our license somewhere. So we're all independent contractors. We're all self-employed.
Mhm.
Um, and I hang my license with Remax Professionals. But I did last year really want to sort of differentiate myself from the crowd and from the balloon. I love the balloon, don't get me wrong. I'm not harshing on the balloon, but I just think that I wanted to sort of, have my own brand within what we do. And so one of the things that I love about Denver architecture is the Denver bungalows. I mean, they're all over the city, and they were built, anywhere between like 1920 and 1940. They're these craftsman style bungalows that you see all over the country, but there's really quite a lot of them, and they come in different sizes, but they more or less have the same interior. And they've been chopped up and remodeled in 1,000 different ways. And the nook in the kitchen is an attribute that they had originally. And it's fascinating to see how people have taken over the nook and changed the nook.
Mhm.
In our current home, which was a bungalow, it had a nook that had just become like part of the countertop and an empty space for recycling to gather. And I reclaimed our nook. I actually built out a nook, and it just seems like I love the word. It's a fun word to say.
Mhm.
It's cozy. It can be big. It can be small. It can be, it could be a window seat. It can be, a bunch of different things. It could be a nook where just big enough to put some sort of memento or something on. It's just one of my favorite architectural attributes. So,
Got it. Got it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I built a website. I didn't build a website. My friend built my website for me. She's amazing. And created a logo, but I still hang my license with Remax Professionals. Don't plan to move anywhere else. It's a wonderful company.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? Do you see yourself continue kind of being a real estate broker and expanding your business, or what else do you have in plan for you?
Yeah, I hope so. I really enjoy it, and it offers a lot of flexibility. It's a really great. I can hear my dog squeaking in the other room. I don't know if you can hear it. It offers me some flexibility to take care of my home and my pets, and
Mhm.
um, yeah, I imagine that I will continue to move forward in this business. I'm at a like really nice sort of pace right now, but I do imagine that I'll hopefully I could see myself growing a team. I could see myself getting into doing more educational programming sort of thing, making that available.
Yeah, cool. And do you have a book recommendation for either real estate or
Oh,
life advice in general?
something that I've been really loving is just The Go Giver. It's just it's a good one. I mean, I'm not an overly spiritual person or anything like that, but um, I really do believe the more that you put out into the world, the more you get in return. I think that that's probably one that I would uh, recommend to anybody.
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I've never read it. Yeah, it sounds interesting. I like the concept of go giver instead of go getter, right? All right, so then last question for you is where can people find more about you?
Oh, well, they can go to my website, denvernook.com. And there's also a section called Notes from the Nook, which is my blog, which is tips on all things Denver. And so it's also probably a good resource for people who are just visiting Denver and they want to find some sort of insider information, looking for, quick trips out of the city, great restaurants, different neighborhoods, that sort of thing. So, yeah, denvernook.com.
Yeah, that's easy enough to remember.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz, for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.